Hello everybody, welcome back to America's Grandmasters. We're about to get underway with match number 1 out of 6 on the day. It's our long day here in the Americas region, and get to be joined by Sottle. It's nice and, kind of refreshing.
It's a privilege that I don't think you've earned, but one that you've received nonetheless.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But this matchup has big implications for both of these players, bloodyface and justsaiyan. Both at the top of the standings in Division B. Saiyan had a 2 or 3 match lead at one point over second place, but has since fallen a few pegs. Took a loss last week and then took a loss yesterday, as we saw. So we'll see if he can try and pick it up. I know first seed is after the threat of relegation is gone and you've all but secured your playoff seed. First seed is the final step after that, where you do get a bye in the first round, essentially, of the playoffs. So I know both these players have to have their eye on that.
Yeah, for sure, and it's it's just bragging rights as well, right? Like I think anyone would want to say that league season they finished first place in their division. I think it will give them enormous confidence going forward to season 3 and beyond. It will make them have a target on their back in terms of people that someone that people regard as being one of the strongest players in the region and someone to look up to. And I think that's important. It's not only important for results and for prize money and for prestige, but just for reputation and branding moving forward. These are all things that are relevant.
Yeah. And we have a pretty similar lineup across the board for both these players with a class mirror matchup, but obviously with some different techs and different archetype almost completely with the Druid decks, where Saiyan is bringing Quest Druid and bloodyface is bringing Malagos Druid. But we'll talk about those a little bit more later. Now we're going to get into game number 1, which is Priest versus Warrior.
I think just those small differences in that one archetype, or large differences in that one archetype, Malagos Druid versus Quest Druid, has completely changed the pick and ban strategy, because you guys would have seen the graphic on your screen, but just to cover it, it means that justsaiyan has elected to ban away the Malagos Druid and then protect his Warrior, whereas if it was a Quest Druid, Quest Druid is a good matchup against Warrior, but it's by no means a guaranteed win like Malagos Druid almost is, unless they're packing a whole bunch of Heckle bots and whatever else.
Yep.
So the fact that it's a Mali Druid instead of a Quest Druid has changed things dramatically. It's why we're not seeing double Priest protection in this matchup. The 2 protected decks, the Warrior and the Priest, are the ones being queued by each player, though.
Yeah, that makes sense. Turn 1 Northshire Cleric for bloodyface. Not the insane follow-up that you'd hope for in this matchup. Take a look at Saiyan's text for this matchup in particular. He does have the double weapons project. And that's pretty much it as far as specific text. No Spellbreaker, no Militia Commander, no double Plague of Wrath. Just kind of a pretty standard Control Warrior list, with the one exception being the double Hecklebot, which has seen a surge in popularity going into Week 6.
Right. Saiyan chose not to play his Atonium Rover on 1, which I think there is some debate over in the matchup. Playing it here obviously just allows the Cleric to start farming it and drawing cards, and if Circle of Healing's in the hand, and you get in serious trouble if there's an injured Tolvir as well, like you can almost lose the game on the spot. The upside is that you open yourself up to draws like Snip Snap off the top, for example, and Coin Snip Snap, Magnetize, kill the Cleric. Weapons Project off the top then also becomes live if you have the Eternium Rover in hand, as does Shield Slap, because you can then pick up that Eternium Rover as well. So immediately, like so many Priest matchups are like this, the decision tree already goes haywire from turns like 1 to 3, because there's so many different paths that you can take, and the risk-reward of all those plays are, in almost every matchup, massively skewed in favor of the Priest, which is why it's so favored in most matchups. This one, a little bit more even, though.
Injured Blade Master Circle of Healing for bloodyface here. Gonna draw a card. Weirdly beneficial for him, the fact that if there's a Restless Mummy and the Injured Blade Master gets killed, it makes Psycho Pump good.
Yeah.
But I think the target for Saiyan has to be on this Northshire Cleric with 3 damaged minions on board, and the threat of card draw being incredibly real. Might see something like an Isolation on the Injured Blade Master, but then that presents kind of its own threat in the fact that you could just die over a couple turns.
Just make a big minion and hit you, you know?
Yeah, because Plague of Wrath is still a few turns away if you're coining out Restless Mummy.
Right.
So that's actually a rough decision, but I think just isolating Ancient Blade Master is the play that gives your opponent less room to win the game on the spot by drawing a ton of cards.
Agreed.
Or by playing Cycle Pomp and getting back an Ancient Blade Master, which is the only minion you can kill.
Yep. Yeah, I think there would have been a momentary consideration from justsaiyan as to what not coining there and holding on for potentially a coin Plague of Wrath look like, but then you will quickly dismiss that thought as silly because things can very quickly go wrong with like Nephicet Ritualist and a million other cards as well. Just have to do the responsible thing, try and shut down the card draw, and Saiyan gets rewarded for it. That is the weaker of the minions coming back from the Psycho Bomb. It's the bigger of the minions, but it is also the weaker of the minions.
Job's done.
You could be at 1 health, and it doesn't matter if your opponent doesn't have a board in this matchup. So you can take hits from a Wild Pyromancer early if it makes your ability to clear boards and deny card draw as the game goes on.
I must
Outside of the Blonde Samdi, this hand is
aggressively mediocre.
way better than I could ever.
Here's enough.
It just felt like you were struggling. I don't know. It felt like you needed a phrase.
Yeah,
So gave
I
you
was
one.
thinking like it could be good because he has a lot of tools to continue his tempo.
Yeah.
But I don't know if tempo is the way you win this matchup. I think it's by drawing a ton of cards and creating multiple board states through removal and eventually sticking one big minion. Yeah, oof is right.
Yeah, I think dream scenario, like if you can get just like a 10/10 Divine Spirit minion or something, like super early in the game and just start hitting away from that, like that's the one thing in your deck the Warrior doesn't really have counterplay to it. Like that's win condition #1, but that's very rare. Only a very tiny percentage of hands is going to lead you to that. So once that point is gone, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just draw a whole bunch of cards, make sure you're high on resources. Basically, make sure you're drawing enough cards so that you can just play all your cards every turn and still have a bunch of cards in your hand at the end of it.
Weapons Project does allow for a kill on the injured Blade Master here with the Restless Mummy.
Right.
I wonder.
Saiyan feel it's more important to deal with the threat of Bomb Samdi coming down next turn.
Which would lead to
Very little this turn. Yeah.
Hecklebot?
Yeah. Yeah. Hecklebot Weapons Project the Pyro? I mean,
can hold me.
it's not the worst play in the world, right?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you pull out a character
Yeah, that's true.
and kicking yourself.
There's still 2 Beaming Sidekicks left in the deck, though, I believe, right? Not
Yeah.
anymore! Bloodyface just didn't draw a card this turn. Love it when that happens.
You follow.
I like the setup from Saiyan. Clearing off the Wild Pyromancer, not killing the Restless Mummy. This sets up for a Plague of Wrath.
Yes, very nice.
Because if Blonde Samdi comes down, then there's no other spells or Wild Pyromancer that can kill it. So either he trades with Injured Blade Master, and you get to put it in the Eternium Rover and Wardpath, or Plague of Wrath. Or he doesn't play Blonde Samdi, and you're pretty happy regardless.
I think I want to spend the mana on Weapons Project this turn.
So you can Tomb Warden.
Yeah, it gives you the ability to kill like a Light Warden or something on the following turn and play your Tomb Warden. Saiyan disagrees, though.
We've seen a surprisingly high amount of not spending mana on Weapons Project today.
Very crucially, in one instance, yeah. I think, like, how impactful that Viper decision ends up being, like, you have to start going really deep down the rabbit hole, like, how Hunter Ace would have responded to that play if he didn't have lethal, like, what would his Zephyrus plan have been then? Like, I think it's very possible that Viper kind of loses to various Zephyrus cards anyway.
But,
But
it's the difference of dying on.
exactly.
He won the series. It's
Exactly.
okay.
He had a play that made it be a game, and he did not make that play.
I
He
got
made
you,
the play
friend.
that lost, which I am not defending that.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Better not.
Told you I'm defected. USA! USA! Am I doing that right? No? Okay.
For the most part.
Nice.
I think we do have some Canadians and South Americans.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I apologize.
But they're all part of the USA in some weird, twisted way.
Job's done.
Still not out of the woods yet. Inner fire would be 12, 24, 26, 27, 28. Not quite.
Nope.
Nothing to heal. To get that bit of extra damage. Nothing to heal period right now to get value to Northshire Cleric, which is troubling.
Maybe this goes to speaks to Saiyan's line on the previous turn. Maybe he's just a level deeper than I am, where he just doesn't even want to play Tomb Warden on this turn, which is why he didn't spend the mana on Weapons Project previously, because he knows his opponent's going to have a Northshire Cleric in his hand. So if he plays Tomb Warden, that gives bloodyface the ability to draw cards. Whereas if he just shield blocks, kills something with a Weapons Project, as he did, then he gets in situations like this, where he then finds himself a full clear on the next turn. Saiyan's line,
well,
definitely paid off for him.
Hear me out.
Okay.
He didn't die last turn.
Sure.
Nothing's really changed except one card draw. And he'll be at the same health as he was last turn if he plays Dr. Boom Mad Genius.
No, he took 9 that turn.
No, because he healed his face.
Oh, did he? Okay. Fair, sure. Okay.
So with 13 cards left in deck, I think this is about the only turn you'll ever find to play Dr. Boom Mad Genius for the rest of the game in most scenarios.
All right, I'm on board.
Okay, so that is 24, 25, 26, 27.
12, 24, 26, 27, yeah. It's just awkward because the Light Warden is already, like, fairly symmetrical. If we'd have had these minions' positions switched, then Inner Fire would end up representing more damage. Light Warden's already trucking away.
And with Blast Shield on the other side, not a reliable way to set up for the lethal, but I think you just have to go for it.
I agree. Completely agree.
Quickly.
It goes to 30, and he deals 29. Yeah, very good. Oof. Results oriented. He could have cleared this board last turn.
He could have cleared the board last turn. That is correct.
I like Saiyan's line when you explained it to me. Like, I can get on board with that logic for sure. So this is not a criticism. It's just a description of the world in which we live.
With double silence in hand, Bloodyface even has a check to the Tomb Warden.
Yep.
I don't see a way out for Saiyan given both hands. Obviously, Tomb Warden plus Blast Shield is the best play for him. He only dies to double silence. But Bloodyface, double silence is going to win the game with a lot of overkill. Way more than enough. Boom!
Take it.
I like the big noise.
That's why it's a big noise. Lets you know you've done something right.
Bloodyface definitely did something right. Pretty like standard game from Priest. Not really anything fancy. The onus is mostly on the warrior to try and remove things.
Yeah, the Tempo Pyromancer on 2 was kind of interesting because he did end up getting, quote, punished. Again, that's completely results-oriented and not a criticism, by having that be revived from his Psychopomp, whereas otherwise he would have had 2 very high-quality minions. But I actually really like playing the Pyromancer there because of the situation it created on the following turn, where he Circle of Healing'd his Blade Master, he drew the cards, but then all of his minions were injured again, which is actually way more threatening, weirdly, to the opponent than a bunch of fully healthy minions, because you have a Northshire Cleric on board. He knew Plague of Wrath wasn't a threat at that point, so I actually like that little setup that he had with the Tempo Pyromancer, plus, you know, he played his Pyromancer on 2. Tempo good, dealt some damage.
Yeah.
That works too.
And not that it's, again, a super fancy play, but knowing when to all in on the board with the Light Warden, his hand's not going to get any better than that. Inner Fire was the draw that his hand needed. So bloodyface is going to take the Priest versus Warrior match, but we got plenty of series left to play. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, game number 2 in the battle for first place in Division B.
Welcome to this edition of Around the Fern with TJ and Just Saying.
Happy to be here.
Glad to hear it. So I've talked to this about you before. I've never heard you exclaim. So we have an hour in this room, and my goal is going to be to get you to exclaim.
That's just not going to happen.
It is going to happen. Imagine you're walking down the street. You just got lunch. It's a delicious burrito. You're hungry. You haven't eaten in 2 days. Then some guy walks up on the street, punches you in the face, and steals your burrito. You're out of money. You don't have cash. You didn't drive there. You walked there an hour. And now this guy comes up and punches you and steals your burrito. How do you react?
I don't even like burritos. I thank the guy and say, whatever. I was waiting for
What's your
Uber Eats
favorite
anyway.
food?
I mean, it has to be something with rice, but like, I kind of like risotto. The Italian style is very nice.
Italian style risotto. Now imagine you're walking down the street, you get your Italian risotto, and then a guy comes up to you, punches you in the face, and steals your risotto. What do you do?
Actually, I just
Do you yell? Do you
I
scream?
get confused. I'm mad.
You're mad, so you
But-
want to yell.
But then I think this guy probably needs it more than me. I don't think it's physically
Let's say you're in a
possible for me.
giant field and you're strapped to a chair. The only person that can save you is 1,000 yards away. If you don't yell to them to communicate to them, you're going to sit in that chair forever because that's the only other person on earth. Do you yell to them to save your life?
I mean, if he's the only other person on earth, do I like this guy? Are we friends even?
He's blind.
I just admit that this is the end. Last person on earth. I don't know about, like, is his personality nice? Like, is he fun to hang out with? Or
Can we play a game?
yeah, we can play
I'm going
games.
to say a word, and you have to say it slightly louder. Risotto. 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 Risotto.
Risotto.
Bloodyface currently leads our first match of the day, 1-0 over Just Saiyan. Bloodyface wins this match. He will be tied with Saiyan for first place in Division B. And with only 1 week left of regular season play, that's where you want to be.
It absolutely is. You'd much rather be at the top than the bottom. It's a cliche, it goes without saying, but we're going to say it anyway, because sometimes the truth is just self-evident, TJ.
Yep. I feel like that's what we're here for, to point out the obvious things that everybody knows, but nobody wants to say.
It might be what you're here for.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And by proxy, that means that's what you're here for.
Okay. All right, I'll accept that.
But heading into game number 2, pretty devastating blow for Saiyan because he was expecting to win the Warrior versus Priest matchup. You know, I think you would just do the same old thing and protect Priest, ban something else, Q Priest game 1.
Yeah.
If you didn't think you can gain an edge.
Yes. For sure. I think, like, for sure, Saiyan's, like, matchup grid that he would have done or whatever, like, win rates that he was looking at, like, he feels like he's better off with Warrior against Priest than Warrior against the Malagos Druid, which is certainly true. And then there's other factors in that in terms of what led to him protecting his Warrior and banning out the Druid. But I think just the way the format works, like, if you go protected deck versus protected deck right off the bat, and it's not a mirror match, like it is usually with a Priest mirror that we see a lot, and then, you know, you end up losing with your protected deck in that opener, that is a big hit for you in the series as a whole. Now, Saiyan's still in okay shape because he is now re-queuing his Warrior with double Weapons Project, Harrison Jones, double Shield Block, double Eternium Rover into the Holy Wrath Paladin, which, to my mind, and to the way that the EU games have been going at least, is a good matchup for the Control Warrior. But you were saying yesterday that that has not borne out in the win rate in Americas.
No. I think it's some misunderstanding of the matchup from Warrior side in some instances. Maybe some variance with just the way the draws pan out, not having a turning rover on 1, not having armor gain when you need the burst of armor. But it does feel like with Zephyrus, the amount of damage that you can pump out and the amount of kind of like forced timing from the Paladin, where you're basically forcing massive mana expenditures on the turns where they need those bursts of armor.
Yeah.
We have seen Paladin come on top of this matchup, and I think bloodyface has shown some of the most proficient Holy Wrath Paladin play out of many players in Americas. I think him and Firebat are definitely up there as far as experts in the deck.
Now, TJ.
Yes.
We were talking about this yesterday, and you know, in the UK, Halloween not really a huge deal. We're starting to get a grip on it, but haven't really bought in yet. How would you rate bloodyface's Halloween decorations based on his webcam right now?
1 out of 10.
Okay.
Everything else has been there every other week. He has put up one cartoon ghost with the word boo on it.
Saiyan's backdrop also getting in the Halloween spirit. It's supposed to represent the bleak emptiness of the human soul. A terrifying thought.
Yes. I think Saiyan's is a 6 out of 10. Even more frightening when you consider that Blizzard provided that bleak emptiness to them.
Blizzard Entertainment providing bleak emptiness since 1992.
Oh, Eternium Rover picked up now, Weapons Project in the hand. So we're starting to assemble some of the pieces. I think the biggest battle for Warrior is sort of in the mid-game where you have to balance, I want to press armor up every turn, but I also want to remove these 2 1/1s that are on the board because those negate my armor up and maybe then some.
Yes.
And for bloodyface, it's about forcing that awkward position. It's about every single point of damage going to the face and minimizing armor gain wherever possible.
And I can also understand why the Warriors get lost in the idea of like trying to push tempo and play minions and put pressure on the Paladin, because it's not as simple as like you always just gain maximum armor every turn or you always play for maximum tempo every turn. Because if you tempo at the right times as the Warrior, you can suddenly do things like convince the Paladin to True Silver one of your minions, convince the Paladin to take time off from drawing cards, to have a timeout turn or have a removal turn. And then if you're slowing them down by pressuring them, that means that it takes them more turns to get to the end of their deck, which means you draw more cards from your deck, which on average means more Weapons Projects and Zilliaxes and Dr. Boom Mad Genius and all of these things that net you more armor over the course of the game. So it's never quite as simple as just always deduct 2 mana from your turn every turn and press the button. Sometimes you gain more armor over the course of the game by pressuring than by actually gaining armor on any given turn.
Yeah, very well said. And then sometimes you have hands like these.
Sometimes you just draw both the Weapons Project and the Harrison Jones.
You can't take me.
Kind of a nice pickup from bloodyface, not for the fact that he gets the efficiency of healing in the future, but for the fact that he really didn't have much else going on.
No, he did not. Would have been a risky Acolyte of Pain at best. Shivala drawn. Bloodyface's list single True Silver champion, since we are talking about that. So justsaiyan essentially already has a True Silver checked and the Zephyrus Tyrian route checked, or alternatively, just Weapons Project Harrison to draw some cards, and then still the second Weapons Project for that set, for that True Silver. That would then open up the Tyrian route for bloodyface, which is pretty much the maximum damage you can ever get off Zephyrus in this matchup, if you have an Ashbringer stick.
Another prismatic lens.
8-card hand Acolyte. My Elven Archer, still an 8-card hand.
Hey, speak to me.
Missed one face damage.
Oh my goodness. So this is how the Warrior Paladin games usually go in Europe, eh?
Yes, yeah, this is very familiar.
This is a rare sight to me.
Okay. Yeah, I like this. Cycle through, get that nail in the coffin, find yourself a Ziliax as well, and then you're pretty much set with all the go-to cards in the matchup. Yeah, that one helps as well.
Yep, Dr. Boom Mad Genius, normally used later on in the game as a burst of armor as opposed to trying to gain value. Reason being is because on average the natural warrior armor up is more armor over the course of 5 turns than Dr. Boom Mad Genius is.
It does play into kind of what I was explaining earlier though, whereas if you play Dr. Boom Mad Genius, you only have 1 turn every 5 where you have to spend mana on pressing your hero power to gain a roughly equivalent amount, whereas on all the other turns you can fully pressure, your other hero powers are good for tempo as well, that kind of thing. But for the most part, Dr. Boom is just used as like a big shield block on a crucial turn, just to gain that 1 spike when it really matters.
Yeah, it does all depend on how far ahead you think you are. Like in this case, Saiyan has still a ton of armor left in his deck, or left in his hand, excuse me. Still has a Ziliax in his deck, and he's already at 44. So this is one of those cases where I think you could get away with playing an early Dr. Boom Mad Genius because that does give you additional flexibility for your turns.
For sure.
Down the line. But at the same time, you know, if you get too high of an armor total, if you use Dr. Boom and Shield Block and Weapons Project too early, then that negates the effect of Ziliax on turns where you need a burst armor. But again, it's all about reading the situation, your opponent's maximum damage, what's happened over the course of that time, because like in a weird way, yeah, Ziliax becomes less efficient of a heal because the first Holy Wrath's not dipping you into health, but that also means that you have to spend 9 mana to play Dr. Boom Mad Genius after first Holy Wrath is used.
So if my opponent's first Holy Wrath is not allowing me to get any Ziliax value afterwards, I'm feeling pretty good about where the matchup is.
Exactly. Because then that means you're above 30 anyway after the first Holy Wrath, which means you're in a pretty good spot.
Wrong one.
It's okay. He's got time. Bloodyface still has 10 cards left in his deck. He's got at least 2 turns.
No tomb can hold me.
The Zephyrus active as well. I feel like we've been seeing a lot of double-figure cards active Zephyrus in my limited work experience with the Americas region.
We love our one-ofs.
Still full value from this Christology, I think.
Yeah.
Blood Mage Kangor. Yeah.
And both prismatic lens still in hand. Kind of rough. Had trouble catching those because of how many combo pieces he drew early on. Like combo pieces, you know, essentially 4 out of his first 6 or 7 cards were combo pieces.
Does he always get a Baleful now off this prismatic lens? Is that his only minion left?
Yes. Both Wild Pyromancers gone. All the Crystology minions drawn. High Priest Thekel played.
Excellent, like this. Get usage out of the spell damage while you can. Just get that 1 extra damage to the
Can
face.
hold me.
This is just control warrior, TJ.
I set expectations for you, and I feel like these pan-outs are not delivering.
This is just what happens.
He's at 55 health.
Trade this 3-1.
Yeah, but as I also mentioned, it is, I think, also about a certain misunderstanding of the matchup at times. Overvaluing tempo, I think, has happened very often in this matchup.
Right.
Or not sticking to a game plan, like trying to tempo out earlier and then try and gain armor later on. Just hit the button. Just armor up.
I wonder. The light bends to my will.
Zephrys for upgrade?
Well, you're just going to Zephrys for an Ashbringer anyway, so why not make your own Ashbringer? I was just wondering whether Saiyan might ever get himself into a position where he just lets Bloodyface have this True Silver because he knows he doesn't lose to True Silver.
I think so, honestly, because then Weapons Project comes down for the Tyrion.
Yes. Because I don't think this hand ever loses to like this 8 True Silver damage plus the Hammer of Wrath, or has that already been used? It's already been used as well, okay.
1 consecration left.
So there's 1 consecration, this True Silver damage, plus 60 from Holy Wrath, Pyroblast. That doesn't kill him with this hand, right? So I think he can afford to just play around it and let Bloodyface have this True Silver. Yep, Saiyan agrees. Love it.
So in the deck we have Holy Wrath, Consecration, Timeout, and Subdue as the final 4 cards.
So these prismatic lenses got stuck in hand so long for Bloodyface that they now only draw 1.
They just draw a spell.
Lucky.
4 mana, draw a spell. Or 4 mana, draw a card, since all he has is spells. Would feel really bad to shrink right here, considering that that likely 2 Mordins are going to come down next turn.
Yeah, pretty sure he wanted the Subdue off one of those prismatic lenses. Allowed him to push 5 more this turn. Pretty excellent for him.
Think this is a Shirvala Banker turn and hope you don't draw it?
I think we are getting somewhere close to that territory, yes. Whether or not that is the highest percentage win rate, like, we probably, I mean, I was about to say we probably see it is. We see that nothing Bloodyface does really matters in this position because Saiyan's hand is just the goods.
Yeah.
But Bloodyface staring down an unknown hand with 8 cards remaining in Saiyan's deck, like, all he's doing is just giving credit to some cards being in those last 8 cards and figuring out a line that wins.
Heckleball with no minions is just a 3/8 taunt.
So 35 right now. He can go to 37. He can go to... Sorry, 57, 63 with the Weapons Project, 70 with the Dr. Boom Mad Genius. -4, -2. So yeah, he absolutely does not ever lose to this True Silver. I just wanted to double check the maths on that statement that I made on the previous turn. It's absolutely true. He does not lose to this True Silver champion ever. So that is why you see him respecting it. Respecting the Tyrion with the Weapons Project, because Bloodyface is going to need something ridiculous like a Tyrion sticking. Like the Tyrion itself landing a hit and then the Ashbringer coming through for full value afterwards to be able to cut through all of that.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I mean, this may be bloodyface's last chance to push through a little bit of face damage with Shrink Ray plus Consecration. Would allow him to push 8 this turn.
I didn't even count the Ziliax, and I got above 70, by the way, just if you want to fully represent how...
Now, the timing could change things with how he forces Saiyan to spend his mana.
Yeah.
But did get, full value out of this one True Silver Champion in the deck. Is starting to chip away with some 1/1s. Has him below 50.
You're a silver lining kind of guy, TJ. I like it.
Yep. So now Saiyan knows that the first Holy Wrath turn is happening, so he has to make sure that he has a check for Shirvala on the opposing turn. And he has a ton of checks.
He does.
Shirvala.
He has a double buffed Ziliax that solves basically all of his problems in one minion next turn. He needs to kill a Shivala, and he needs to heal a little bit. Well, guess what? He does both of those things, plus more.
It's time to test your metal. Let's stash that away.
Even managed to play around the discounted Holy Wrath 2-in-1 turn out, even though that wasn't possible for a variety of reasons this game. Saiyan, having seen both Prismatic Lens draw only 1 card, means that he doesn't have to fog his brain by thinking about swapped mana costs. Everything costs the amount of mana it's supposed to.
Yep.
I must move quickly.
I feel like Subdue is kind of necessary, but
Doesn't get you anywhere, though.
you're just hoping that the bottom 7 cards are all of the armor gain and life gain.
Right. Play a second Shivala here and hope 1 lives for you to be able to banker next turn, just so you can push 1 damage with that Silverhand recruit.
Yep.
Nope, that sounds terrible.
Armor up, shield slam, Ziliax.
What now?
To be 100% confident that he's not taking minion damage this turn, since that's just about the only way he loses.
Unity.
He
Precision.
knows exactly what his opponent's cards are, but I still think, yeah, 2 individual taunts is probably just the responsible way to do it.
Has checked to Tyrion plus the Ashburner in 1 turn, which should be lights out after this next Shivala combo happens.
Yep, does need to make sure that this Shivala itself doesn't stick as well, plus the next one. He has like Brawl Omega Devastator to take care of that.
I'm out of
Like
cards.
Wrath turn if he wants to go that way.
It's time to test your metal.
Now the Zephyrus Pyroblast is a problem. Because now Saiyan needs to Brawl.
And Weapons Project and Armor Up.
Yes, but the 7/5s can live.
Ah, so it's a 50-50. After all that, it comes down to a 50. What is happening?
Yep, you said it, the timing of the
All right.
threats.
He's okay.
Weapons Project Hero Power. We've already seen this once, Saiyan, don't make the mistake again.
Hit
Yeah,
it.
sure, that makes sense.
Weapons Project. Hero Power.
Armor up, you go to 12, you take 1 swing from this
And then
weapon
you-
ever from the opponent, and then you start playing taunts. You go down to 10 next turn, then you go back up to 12, but then the Pyroblast Hero just takes care of it anyway, with the Weapons Project swing back the other way.
But you can see how close it can get. He needed literally every armor card in his deck.
He still lost.
Huh?
Pyroblast plus the weapon was lethal, TJ.
Oh, yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. It happens. He had every art.
He needs the 2-2 exactly to win on that
Oh,
turn.
he needs the 2-2
Yes.
exactly to win.
It was 75% in his favor. So even then, like maybe
Like it just whenever I see those situations, it just looks like the warrior has everything they need and 1,000,000 armor total, and we call them the favorite the entire game.
Yeah.
And then the timing just doesn't work out, and they can't fit everything into a single turn, and they lose anyway.
So two things. Firstly, that was spectacular because you actually managed to look away from who died in the game while you were making that speech immediately.
Yes.
That was great.
Because for some reason I thought he was at 13, and I was like, all right, he's 1 damage off lethal for the rest of the game. Like, that's what my brain just went there.
But secondly, it makes me question, and I was saying the exact same thing that Saiyan was executing about not destroying the true silver damage. Because, like, looking at the way the game would have panned out there, if he'd have cut away that true silver damage with the weapons project, he would have had that mana spent on gaining the 6 armor anyway, and he had, Ziliax and Tomb Wardens in his hand that whole time, so maybe he just never gets hit in the face with a weapon again the entire game.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm just, like, looking back at that after the fact, and at the time, I was just counting damage and, like, okay, he doesn't need to care about this true silver, it doesn't matter. But he still had Weapons Project in his hand. He still had Dr. Boom that he just was never able to cast for that extra 7.
It's all about timing.
Which could make the difference. And that's what I was talking about with, like, delaying your opponent drawing through their deck can be very important. Because if Saiyan has 1 or 2 extra turns that game's completely solved. Because he can just spend 1 turn playing Dr. Boom, and that 7 armor, like, breaks the game completely. But since Bloodyface was able to get through his deck so efficiently, he was suddenly able to beat just basically every healing card in the deck.
That's what I'm saying.
No, you're interviewing Bloodyface.
Yeah,
Bloodyface won. Yeah.
All right, Bloodyface. Let's go ahead and start the interview. Can you hear us, man?
Yeah. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes. Sorry, we had a lengthy discussion about that game. How does it feel? A 2-0 in the essentially battle for first place? Because now, if I'm not mistaken, you and Saiyan are tied in record, tied in head-to-head, and you have 2 more tiebreaker 2 points than him after this victory.
It's awesome.
So
it feels amazing.
You have sole possession of first place. What was your prep like going into this week? How did it feel as far as matchups are concerned when it came to just Saiyan? You only have the 1 difference in lineup.
So Saiyan and Amnesiac seem to have been bringing the same lineup for the last few weeks, and it kind of seemed like they worked together, although I wasn't 100% sure. So I was a little bit worried that I'd play against both of them because they're both in contention for playoffs. They could have a strat where they like try to force me to go 0-2 or something, or I've brought pretty much like pretty close to the same thing every week. Although I feel like my lineup isn't like really exploitable unless you're getting super creative. I felt like pretty decent coming into it. I just like kind of felt like Amnesiac was probably going to bring something close to the same lineup. He seems to like Shaman a lot. So I wasn't really worried about him bringing Warrior, which is why I cut the Elysiana. Like, they haven't brought Warrior in like 3 or 4 weeks. Saiyan kind of got the better of me on the lineup, I think, because he has the mirror match. We basically have the exact same lineup, but he has Elysiana and I don't. But because of the way like the format works out, and you don't have to play one of your decks, like basically my Priest is still a huge favorite. His Warrior's a huge favorite. And then after that, we basically both have like Pala mirror or like Pala versus Druid, which is a 50-50. So even though like his lineup was better, technically it's still a coin flip to me. Yeah, I just feel like with the lineup I brought, it's harder to be better than 50% against it, which is what I want, because as long as I go 2-2, well, before this week, coming into it, I was 6-4. As long as I go 2-2, I have a pretty good shot at making playoffs. So, I just wanted a solid lineup that couldn't really be exploited. So, yeah.
So the reason we kept you waiting so long is that TJ and I were engaged in intense debate about that matchup, Paladin versus Warrior. I've always said that, like, if they find the weapons projects and the Ziliax and everything else, like, it's super hard to get there. But you made that look kind of dumb by beating basically every healing card in his deck. Like, what are your thoughts on the matchup?
It's definitely Warrior favored. I mean, I think if Saiyan held one of his shield blocks, he would have won, because, at the end, when you front load all your armor like that and let the Shirvala, the first hit off the Holy Wrath, take off all the armor, your that turn, Ziliax only healed for what, 2 damage or something?
Right.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if he would have gained less armor, taken more HP off the first Holy Wrath hit, then Ziliax back up, and then use the shield blocks, I think he gets out of range of Pyroblast a lot easier. See, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I didn't see like his decisions from his side. He also had the Weapons Project Harrison turn, which seemed good on paper. It bought him tempo. You know, it kind of forced me to deal with this board. But I was just cycling through my deck so fast that, you know, I don't think the pressure really was going to add up. It was more just about me finding a position where I could force him to deal with my Shrivalas and have to heal in the same turn,
Right.
which is basically what ended up happening.
So this is kind of an abstract question, but there was also a key point. He chose deliberately not to Weapons Project your Tree Silver, which I think made sense because he thought he beat the Tree Silver and he wasn't going to beat like Ashbringer maybe. You needed to go for 15. But like, would you agree with that decision from his side, like not knowing the game state?
So for one, he gets the Hecklebot, like kind of, you know, he gets like a few percentage points there. If like Hecklebot gets Baleful Shrivala, that's really nice. It puts the second taunt in play. Obviously, I still have my last board clear left. So the only removal tools I had at that point was Conk, Shrink Ray, and Subdue. And with the Armadillo already out for 2 turns, I think forcing me to kind of Shrink Ray Conk that turn is smart because then once he gets the 2 Mordants down, I have to rely on my Shrivalas to clear them,
Right.
which is like kind of like a little bit dicey in itself. So I think with what I saw, I think his line was good there.
Okay.
And I know we're kind of just talking about this matchup in particular, but it was kind of an interesting game because of the debate that Sottle and I had. You know, the Warriors are winning a lot, which seems to be expected in Europe, but in Americas, it feels like the Paladins are just coming out on top. Do you think it's kind of like a misunderstanding of the matchup in general from a lot of the Warrior players in Americas? Do you think it's just like a higher level of Paladin play? Like, what is there anything that you can spot that you attribute like that kind of, you know, big difference in win rate, despite obviously you saying after winning that Warriors favored?
Actually, I mean, I've watched most of the games from Europe and from Americas. I haven't really spotted any patterns. It could just be, statistically insignificant. It's hard to draw patterns from such a small sample size. You know, sometimes it's going to look like America's Paladins favor and Europe that Warriors favored, but I think in reality, it's a really close matchup, and I think it's only like 60-40 Warrior favored. And I don't think the matchup's trivial to play from Warrior. I think it's really hard to play from Warrior side because you have to basically decide when are you not going to armor up. You know, when are you going to start putting the pressure on, and that's really hard to decide when to do that. So maybe the European players, like I know Yarla, I know Hunter Ace has been protecting Warrior almost every week. Viper's really good at Warrior. They seem to have a lot of Warrior masters. Maybe they just know the matchup a little bit better than the Americas players do. America's players seem to be a little bit more dynamic in what lineups they bring. I think a lot of people like to switch up one of their last couple decks. You know, this is the first time Saiyan brought Warrior in like the last 3 weeks, for example, I think. So it might just be, you know, the small edges adding up. It's hard to say.
Well, we definitely appreciate the insight, Bloodyface. A good interview as always. And you end the week with, at very least, a tie for first place. So big congratulations, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys.